Welcome to Iraqi Dinar News. Today, we are discussing a topic that continues to create major conversations among Iraqi Dinar followers around the world, especially regarding the long-debated issue of removing the 3 zeros from Iraqi currency notes, and what that could mean for holders of the Iraqi Dinar, both inside and outside of Iraq. This subject has circulated for years in financial forums, investor communities, and economic discussions. But it is important to separate realistic monetary policy from speculation and emotional expectations. The question many people continue asking is simple. If Iraq removes the 3 zeros from its currency, what happens to the value of existing notes? Some individuals are concerned that large denominations such as 25, 00, or even millions of Iraqi dinar in paper currency would suddenly become almost worthless after redenomination. Others believe the process automatically creates wealth or instantly changes exchange values overnight. In reality, the situation is far more technical, and understanding how redenomination works is extremely important for anyone following Iraq's economic reforms. To begin with, the phrase removing the 3 zeros refers to a redenomination process. This is not unique to Iraq. Many countries throughout history have restructured their currencies by removing zeros from banknotes in order to simplify accounting systems, stabilize pricing structures, modernize payment systems, and improve confidence in the national currency. Countries such as Turkey, Brazil, and others have used redenomination after periods of inflation or economic restructuring. The process itself does not automatically create wealth, nor does it automatically destroy value if managed correctly. In Iraq's case, discussions about deleting the 3 zeros have appeared periodically in statements linked to the Central Bank of Iraq, often referred to as the CBI. The idea behind such a reform would likely involve replacing large denomination banknotes with newer lower denomination notes, while introducing an adjusted exchange structure. For example, a current 25, 0 IQD note could theoretically become a 25 IQD note in a new series after redenomination. However, the purchasing power is intended to remain proportionally similar during the transition period. This is where many misunderstandings begin among international followers of the Iraqi dinar. When people hear that 3 zeros will be removed, they sometimes assume that millions of dinar in physical notes will suddenly shrink into tiny amounts with no compensation. In practice, if a redenomination is officially implemented, monetary authorities generally establish a conversion framework so that the value relationship remains balanced during the exchange process. The news paragraph specifically mentions concerns about whether notes held outside Iraq would lose value or become insignificant after a redenomination event. According to the interpretation being discussed, the expectation is that the central bank would announce a new rate and allow holders to exchange old notes for new currency or foreign currency equivalents based on the official conversion mechanism established at that time. For viewers in the United States or other foreign countries, an important point raised in the discussion is that exchanges would most likely occur into local currency, such as US dollars, rather than into newly printed Iraqi dinar notes directly. That distinction matters because it suggests the exchange process would depend heavily on international banking channels, exchange regulations, liquidity availability, and the official policies adopted by financial institutions. Now, it is very important to approach this topic carefully and responsibly. As of today, there has not been a globally confirmed implementation of a full redenomination process involving the removal of 3 zeros from circulating Iraqi currency in the way some online discussions suggest. Iraq's monetary policy decisions remain tied to broader economic conditions, including inflation control, banking modernization, oil revenues, foreign reserves, political stability, and fiscal reform. The Iraqi economy has made progress in several areas over recent years. Oil exports remain the backbone of government revenue, and Iraq continues efforts to diversify its economy while strengthening banking systems and digital payment infrastructure. The Central Bank of Iraq has also focused on stabilizing the exchange rate environment, reducing black market currency pressure, and improving international financial compliance standards. These are the types of reforms that matter more in the long run than rumors about overnight currency events. For dinar followers, one of the biggest lessons here is understanding the difference between nominal value and real value. A currency redenomination changes the face value of notes, but it does not automatically increase purchasing power. For example, if 3 zeros are removed, prices, salaries, and accounting systems would generally adjust proportionally as well. A loaf of bread priced at 1.00 dinar could become priced at 1 dinar in the new system. The actual economic value remains relatively consistent if the transition is properly managed. This is why economists usually describe redenomination as a technical monetary reform rather than a magical wealth creation event. The true strength of a currency comes from economic productivity, investor confidence, foreign reserves, stable governance, controlled inflation, and credible monetary policy. Those are the foundations that determine long-term currency performance. Another important issue is public confidence. For Iraq, any future monetary reform would require extensive public education campaigns. Citizens would need clear guidance on how long old notes remain valid, where exchanges can occur, and how pricing systems will transition. International investors and foreign banks would also require formal instructions regarding cross-border exchange procedures. Without transparency and preparation, confusion could undermine confidence in the financial system. The banking sector would play a central role in any such transition. Iraqi banks, international correspondent banks, and currency exchange institutions would need coordination to manage liquidity and ensure compliance with anti-money laundering standards. This is especially relevant because Iraqi dinar trading outside Iraq is relatively limited compared to major global reserve currencies. For viewers wondering whether a future redenomination could still benefit the Iraqi economy, the answer depends on how the reform is implemented. In some cases, removing zeros can improve transactional efficiency, simplify bookkeeping, reduce cash handling burdens, and strengthen psychological confidence in a currency. Large stacks of high denomination notes can create operational difficulties in daily commerce, especially in economies transitioning toward modern banking systems. However, redenomination alone cannot solve deeper structural economic challenges. If inflation, fiscal instability, or weak institutional governance persist, removing zeros may only provide cosmetic change rather than meaningful long-term stability. This is why analysts often emphasize that monetary reform must be accompanied by broader economic reforms. Short-term discussions like these usually increase speculations among currency followers. Online communities often react emotionally to rumors about new exchange rates, lower denominations, or central bank announcements. This can lead to unrealistic expectations, misinformation, and confusion. Responsible financial analysis requires caution because many unofficial claims circulating online are not verified by official monetary authorities. In the short-term economic outlook, Iraq continues to focus on maintaining exchange rate stability and managing its oil-dependent economy amid global market fluctuations. Oil prices remain a major factor, influencing government revenue and budget planning. Stronger oil revenues can support foreign reserves and public spending, while volatility can pressure fiscal stability. Another short-term implication involves international investor perception. Discussions about currency reform often attract global attention, but investors usually prioritize broader indicators such as infrastructure development, security conditions, regulatory reforms, and banking modernization. Sustainable economic growth matters far more than symbolic changes in currency denominations. Long-term, Iraq's economic future will likely depend on diversification beyond oil, anti-corruption reforms, infrastructure investment, private sector development, and integration into the global financial system. If Iraq successfully strengthens these areas over time, confidence in the Iraqi dinar could improve gradually through genuine economic fundamentals rather than speculative narratives. For international holders of Iraqi dinar, patience and realism remain essential. Currency markets are complex, and significant changes in exchange valuation typically occur through long-term economic development rather than sudden dramatic events. Any future reform by the Central Bank of Iraq would likely be carefully structured and officially communicated through regulated financial channels. It is also important to understand that exchange processes for foreign-held currency can involve limitations depending on jurisdiction, banking relationships, and financial regulations. Not every bank handles Iraqi dinar transactions, and international exchange procedures may differ significantly between institutions and countries. This is another reason why viewers should avoid relying solely on internet rumors or unverified social media claims. The statement suggesting that the new IQD will have 3 less zeros reflects a common interpretation of redenomination policy, but viewers should recognize that official implementation details matter far more than simplified slogans. Monetary reform involves legal frameworks, transitional timelines, currency issuance logistics, banking coordination, and public communication strategies. In many successful redenomination cases globally, governments provided overlapping circulation periods where old and new notes circulated simultaneously before old notes were gradually withdrawn. Such systems help minimize panic and allow businesses and consumers time to adapt. Iraq would likely require a similarly organized process if such reforms were officially launched in the future. One reason this topic generates so much attention is because Iraq occupies a unique position economically and geopolitically. The country possesses significant natural resources, especially oil reserves, yet continues navigating post-conflict reconstruction, political complexities, and modernization challenges. As a result, many global observers view Iraq as a country with long-term economic potential, though substantial risks and uncertainties remain. The Iraqi dinar itself has become symbolic for some speculative communities online. Unfortunately, this has sometimes led to exaggerated claims promising extraordinary returns or guaranteed financial outcomes. Responsible analysis must reject those narratives. No currency investment is guaranteed, and no credible financial institution can promise specific future exchange values with certainty. Instead, viewers should focus on measurable developments. These include foreign reserve levels, inflation trends, banking reforms, international trade relationships, government budget performance, and policy statements from the Central Bank of Iraq. These are the indicators professional analysts monitor when evaluating a nation's currency outlook. Another important factor is digital transformation. Iraq has increasingly encouraged electronic payment systems and banking modernization in recent years. Reducing cash dependency and improving financial transparency could support long-term economic efficiency. Modern payment infrastructure also helps strengthen monetary policy effectiveness and financial inclusion. Regional economic relationships also matter. Iraq's trade connections with neighboring countries, energy partnerships, and international financial cooperation all influence economic stability. Stronger integration into global markets can enhance investor confidence and support gradual economic normalization over time. When discussing the possibility of exchanging dinar outside Iraq, it is also necessary to understand liquidity realities. The Iraqi dinar is not among the world's most heavily traded currencies. Exchange access can vary greatly depending on location, banking relationships, and market demand. Therefore, any future official exchange process would likely depend on structured institutional participation rather than informal expectations. For viewers following this story closely, one key takeaway is that redenomination should not be confused with revaluation in the speculative sense often promoted online. A redenomination adjusts nominal units, while a currency revaluation refers to an official upward adjustment in exchange value under specific monetary systems. These are different financial concepts, though they are frequently mixed together in online discussions. If Iraq were ever to pursue major currency reform measures, policymakers would likely prioritize economic stability above all else. Sudden uncontrolled changes could create inflationary pressure, market confusion, or disruptions to public confidence. Central banks generally move cautiously because maintaining trust in the monetary system is critical. This is why official communication is essential. Any credible monetary reform would be announced through recognized government and central bank channels with detailed implementation guidance. Investors and observers should remain cautious regarding anonymous claims, unofficial timelines, or sensational promises circulating online. From a broader economic perspective, Iraq's future potential still depends heavily on reform execution. Large infrastructure projects, energy sector modernization, private sector expansion, and anti-corruption efforts could all influence long-term economic confidence. If these reforms continue successfully over time, they may contribute to stronger macroeconomic conditions that support the dinar indirectly. At the same time, challenges remain. Political tensions, budget pressures, public sector dependency, and global oil market volatility continue affecting Iraq's economic environment. Any realistic analysis must acknowledge both opportunities and risks, rather than presenting one-sided optimism. For currency followers, maintaining a balanced perspective is extremely important. Emotional decision-making can lead to unrealistic expectations or financial mistakes. Watching official data, understanding monetary policy fundamentals, and recognizing the difference between speculation and verified information are all critical habits for responsible financial awareness. In practical terms, if Iraq ever implements a structured redenomination program involving removal of 3 zeros, the transition would likely be designed to preserve proportional value relationships during the exchange process. Existing holders would generally exchange according to officially established conversion rates and procedures. The exact mechanics, however, would depend entirely on policy decisions made at that time. The statement from the news paragraph suggesting that foreign holders exchanging into US dollars shouldn't matter to us reflects one interpretation that proportional value conversion could protect equivalent purchasing value during exchange. However, actual outcomes would always depend on official banking procedures, exchange policies, transaction fees, and international financial regulations in place during any future implementation. That is why responsible observers should avoid assuming guaranteed scenarios. Financial systems involve many moving parts, and currency reforms can unfold differently, depending on economic conditions and government strategy. Ultimately, the biggest story surrounding Iraq's currency is not simply about zeros on banknotes. The real story is Iraq's broader economic transformation, including efforts to stabilize institutions, modernize financial systems, attract investment, improve infrastructure, and strengthen long-term economic confidence. Those factors matter far more over time than the physical appearance of currency notes. As Iraq continues rebuilding and reforming its economy, international attention toward the dinar will likely remain strong. But viewers should focus on credible information, realistic analysis, and verified economic indicators rather than sensational speculation. Thank you for watching today's Iraqi Dinar update. If you appreciate responsible, factual, and balanced coverage of Iraqi economic developments and currency news, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for future updates. And as always, please remember that this content is provided for informational and educational purposes only. It is not financial advice, investment advice, or a guarantee of future currency performance.